want to try and upload them and see if you can share it that way, if it's bricking out your computer the old-fashioned way. Maxime, we're waiting for you to share your screen. Oh, let's see if it bricks out your computer. I'm looking at you, man. Let's see what we got today with Mr. Maxime. Oh, tell me, when's this screen share gonna work? It bricked it out, man. I gotta bring you on here because I just see you suffering backstage and I'm feeling bad for you. Do you want to give me the link and I'll share it?
Yeah, I put it in the private chat. I was gonna go get my guitar. Like I was like, this.
All right, you play. Yeah, give me the link. Play guitar while I. Oh, it's already in here, isn't it?
Yeah, I put it in there. Maybe I was bricked when I tried to upload or to send it to you, but you should be able to share it. Hopefully.
Yes, I got it right here. I've got it. I will bring it on stage, and the fun is over with the guitar. Or, dude, grab yours. Let's rock on. Why don't we? Test-driven prompt engineering is what we talk about.
Here's the thing that like trying to jam online is really hard. You get like a few milliseconds.
It's too much, yeah.
And then you start like slowing down. You know, it's like I go a little bit slower to make up for you.
Catch up for it. Yeah.
And I would not. I will kind of protect your audience from my guitar playing. I think it's a better thing for all of us.
Oh man! Awesome, dude. Well, we've got this here. You're just gonna have to make a sign when you want me to change to the next slide.
Yeah, that'll go pretty fast because this is a lightning talk. So I'm gonna.
Yeah, lightning talk was supposed to start. What, 2 minutes ago? Where are we?
Yeah, so that means I've got 7 minutes left, so I'm gonna blaze through this.
Oh, yeah, don't worry. You can take the whole 10. We're all good. We accounted for a little bit of cushion, so
that's nice.
Yeah, and then
there is. I'm gonna say for people who want to know more, like there's a blog post. So we'll hit up a slide that talks about the blog post that is a little bit of a companion to this talk. So this. It's probably like an hour's worth of content. I'm going to try to cram into 10. So it's pretty heavy. There's a lot to talk about, but I'm going to brush the surface. And then there's the blog post and there's the podcast episode that we recorded just last week. If I'm right about my time blurb, my time blur. All right. So we're talking about test-driven prompt engineering today. Maybe let's jump into a slide or two. I think the next slide is an intro about me. I think you did my intro already, so we can go through that very, very quickly. But I wanted to point out, like my professional's life mission has been to work on open source lately, and then I've been really pushing on Apache Superset. I want to say a few words about that. Superset is a open source business intelligence platform, very much, right? So it's very competitive to the space. If you think, Tableau, Looker, and all these BI tools. So open source and that area through Superset has gotten really, really good recently since we've been working at it. Like, I appreciate the community has been working real hard. So I encourage people to take a look at Apache Superset if you haven't done that in a while. And then you can try it. You can try the greatest version at preset for free. So encourage people to take a look at that and to switch to open source. Like, why, paying for these vendor tools? All right. So let's jump into the topic of the day, which is test-driven prompt engineering. I'm going to start with just a bit of context. I think things that's pretty established given the, this conference here and what we're talking about. But everyone right now is looking to bring AI, the power of AI into the products they are building, right? And that's a big part of what this very conference is about. And if you talk to anyone who's a PM, a product builder, a startup person, like everyone is trying to figure out like how do we harness the power of LLMs and bring that into the context of our product or application we're building. Prompt engineering is very new, right? And it's a new field that's pretty fresh. And LLMs are just weird freaking animals we got to deal with, right? So it's a new, we've been used, as product builders to use, proper APIs with schema for input and output and things that are very, very deterministic. And all of a sudden we have this this weird animal that's very probabilistic, and that has an infinite API surface that has no input or output schema. Unless, I guess, in this infinite API space, you can define some sub areas of API surface, and you can ask for schema, and you can kind of, dictate a schema in some way. And this stuff is evolving very, very quickly, right? The models are evolving quickly. The limitations around the model, the prompt window sizes, all these things are evolving very quickly. All right, so next slide. So this talk is about, and it's a 10-minute talk, so it's very quick, but it's about advocating for a test-driven approach to prompt engineering, like try to make the stuff that's very probabilistic more deterministic. I want to introduce Promptomize, which is my take on an open source toolkit to define these test cases or prompt cases to evaluate your prompts, and bring this idea of like test-driven development to prompt engineering. And then I want to talk about a little bit about our text to SQL use case at Preset. So the reason why I went and built Promptomize and got involved in this space is because we wanted to build text to SQL type features inside the Preset superset. So I'll talk about that. This is the blog post. It looks like it's not rendering the image, but here it is. So you can go to preset.io/blog. There's a bunch of blog, but the blog that we're referring to here is the one called Mastering AI-Powered Product Development, Introducing Promptomize for Test-Driven Prompt Engineering. It's quite a mouthful, but this is what we're talking about today. And there's a lot more structure, examples, pointers, and rich text there. So I encourage you to maybe pop this blog post open if you're interested, or if you're curious to learn more after this talk, to go and look at this. All right, next slide. So our use case, just like to set context, like why are we getting involved into this? So Superset is a full BI platform, but it has a SQL IDE as part of it. And we wanted to bring a few AI assist type features. The one, as you see at the top there's like a little blurb, like where you can do text to SQL, so natural language. Then we'll generate SQL. We'll show you some results, and then we will also recommend charts. So the recommended chart engine is also an AI use case where we want to integrate a product. So in this talk, I'll refer to that example use case to put things in context. All right, next slide. All right, so very quickly, I think people are familiar with prompt engineering, but I think there's been confusion between what I call prompt crafting and prompt engineering. Prompt crafting is like what you do when you interact every day with ChatGPT or your favorite LLM, and you get smart about crafting some nice prompt. Prompt engineering, to me, or at least in the context of this talk, is when you want to bring you want to use an LLM as an API, and you want to bring that inside your product. You actually have to do some prompt engineering and do some proper things there, not just like craft around and ask a fancier question. So prompt engineering to me is like adding the proper context, probably from your product, your application. Specifying an answer format, right? Say like, hey, LLM, I don't want you to write an essay. I want you to return a JSON blob with, your confidence score and some SQL, and maybe some hints as to how to improve my prompt, right? So you can define, specify the format that you want, and it can be bringing structure to its output, limiting scope, setting guardrails, and measuring success, which is what we're going to talk about today. The idea of measuring success is there's so much you can do when you do these prompts, right? You have this natural language interface. You can say like, hey, I'm going to provide some sample data, or I won't, or five rows of sample data, or I will, specify which SQL dialect I might want, or I will put like a capitalized, like imported, don't forget to do this. So there's so much you can do there, and this will influence the result. And that's why it's so, since they're so probabilistic and potentially like unpredictable, I think it becomes just more important to have that. Here, I'm going to go really quickly on this slide. So just pointing out, the blog post talks about parallel between test-driven development. So TDD is for test-driven development, and then applying some of these concepts and ideas to prompt engineering and translating the two. There's a lot that's applicable, right? It's intricately similar. There's a lot of transferable concept. There's also things that are very, very different. And that's what I talk about here and in the blog post, right? For instance, like a test, a normal testing TDD library, it's either you're right or you're wrong. In the case of an LLM or prompt engineering, it might be, 50% right or 80% right? So we're not assuming that everything is Boolean when doing that. So if you're interested in like the parallel and differences between test-driven development and as it applies to prompt engineering, there's more in the blog post about that. Now, what does the prompt iteration lifecycle look like, right? So clearly, and here I'm taking this, reading a book from a page from the TDD book, which is first you start like, what is the behavior? Define your use case and the desired AI behavior. Like, what's the input? What's the context? And what's the output you want from the AI? Then you start, before writing your first prompt, you define your test cases, right? You define a suite of tests that are like, if I ask this question, given this database schema, I expect the following SQL, or SQL that contains these columns or these tables. And then we're entering the iteration loop here, where then you'll run your test, you'll evaluate the result, right? How is my prompt performing? You'll refine the test perhaps and refine the prompt, and then you loop and you stay in that loop until you reach the point of, wow, this AI, I can measure and know for a fact that this AI is helpful and my prompt is successful and it matches the success criteria to bring it to my product. And then and only then is when you would bring this prompt into production, right? Similarly, once you bring your prompt into production, you probably want to improve your prompt. Like, there's a lot you can do. You want to do some more engineering, get it to be more accurate. You want to be able to measure that your new fancier prompt that's using, a different model perhaps, or using a fancier vector database, or just is using like this slightly fancier, prompt generation technique, that it's actually working better than your previous prompt, right? And you want performance metric, like how long does it take? How much does it cost to actually run my test suite against the, say, OpenAI API? And you want to loop over that. And what I'm talking about today is really about like this iteration loop and building this prompt case testing suite. All right, I'm waiting for the slide to, so introducing Promptomize. So there's a GitHub, the general idea. So Promptomize is like a test, I'm sure you're all familiar, or at least like the engineers in the room familiar with the test libraries. In Python, there's PyTest, right? And then there's some specialized libraries too, and say JavaScript, like Enzyme for React, or React testing library. So Promptomize is really a bit of a testing library and toolkit, right? A way to express tests, a way to run tests, and a way to evaluate results from tests. And that's what it is about. I think in the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about like some of the core key features of Promptomize. It's a way to define prompt cases as code, attach evaluation functions to those prompt cases, generate prompts variations dynamically potentially. So since you express your prompt cases, your test as code, you can generate some prompts dynamically, perhaps in some cases. Execute and rank across different engine. So run, so it's a prompt test runner. and then report on the prompt performance, like produce a report of like the detail of each prompt, whether it succeeded or not, what was the input, what was the output, and compiling results on it. This is an example that we have. If you're interested to kind of see the mechanics of it and how it works, if you pip install Promptomize, you will get these examples, right? So you can play with these examples. So this is an example where we craft a prompt that generates Python function, right? So this specific example is like you give a prompt, like write a function that tests if a number is a prime number and returns a Boolean. And then we attach some evaluator functions to it. In this case, is 2 prime, is 4 prime, is 7 prime. And then what Promptomize can do is it allows you to express these prompts in a specific way and then to run them, evaluate them, and produce reports. Next slide. So here we have a fancy little CLI that there's Promptomize run, and shows like all of some of the options, but it's a smart test runner. So it will find your tests or your prompt cases. It will run them for you. And there's some things to allow you to do human review, right? So if you want to do like force a yes or a no, in some cases you can do that. So there's a bunch of like little fancy features around tests, around running things. And then next slide, it will be a very, very quick high-level overview of some of the reporting functionality. So on the right side, you can see that this is an example of a prompt case run for a single test, and we produce a YAML file. That's like a big kind of report file that has all the details of everything that ran in the background, right? So for each test, we'll call it a suite run, right? So maybe I have 600 tests that evaluate my text to SQL. I go and run these 600 tests. I will have the atomic detail of each test outperform, and it will produce this big YAML file with all the details for that suite. Now, using this test, you can also run other Promptomize report commands where you can see what is the percentage of success, right? And what is the performance, the percentage of success per category. And then eventually, right, like you have these YAML files, but you could ask questions to these YAML files, like how long did it take an average? What is my P99, P95, and a P50 of how long it took to execute the prompts, and what is the average number of tokens? So you can build on these reports and build a lot of statistics. Some features we don't have to that are intricate and interesting is, hey, you could have 2 tests run, and you could say diff the test that succeeded and failed in these different versions, right? So you can understand, well, this is performing better, but it's actually performing lower in certain cases, right? So it's all about producing that and having a more systematic approach to evaluating whether your prompts are working well or whether they're not working well, they're more expensive, or they take more time. Next slide. So this is just yet another pointer to the blog posts. So much more information there. And then there's the GitHub, and you can pip install Promptomize and play with it. For me, I think it's an ambitious project in some ways, but it's pretty contained. But what is really interesting here to me is more the approach, the reference implementation. We use Promptomize, at preset to test or prompt, but it's still a very, very early project. So if you want to get involved, it's a good time to influence the future of the project and get involved and shape the direction, since it's super early on in this field and in this specific project and community. And I believe that was my last slide. There might be another one. I think it says that's all, folks.
So that is all, folks. That is awesome. I threw the blog in there, and I also let people know in the chat that I am a huge fan of this. I mean, we talked about it for like an hour and a half last week, and it's so cool to see the idea of being able to really like put some numbers around your models and how the models are working and how your prompts are working with the models and is your specific use case. So I love it. We're going to be dropping that podcast episode probably in like a couple weeks. And so if anybody does not watch our podcast, this is a great moment for me to plug it right here, scan that QR code, and you will see Max and I chopping it up in a bit. Dude, Max, awesome. Thank you so much. I'm gonna kick you off now because we're like 10 minutes behind, and I've been telling everybody I'm gonna be like a clock today, like Ringo. You might as well call me Ringo because I'm keeping the time so tight. But I am not, man. I have lost that title. That's all I want to say. Dude, thank you though, Max. And I'm going to be in San Francisco in 2 weeks. And so hopefully we can meet up if you're around.
Yeah, let's try to see if we can meet for a drink or something. And then if I believe there's a Slack too, so I'm gonna go on the Slack and take questions and talk to people for a little while too. So I'll be active on the Slack if you want to ping me directly, and I'll be scanning the channel. So happy to connect with people and even get on a Zoom with whoever's interested.
There we go.
I don't want to distract from the mainstream. Like, this is live. You should probably be here and be full attention to this mainstream live stream right here.
That's it. There is some questions coming through in the chat that I just dropped into our chat because we're mainstreaming on a different platform, so you can go through there and see. And
I'll have both open. I'll have like the Slack open and the live stream open.
There we go. All right, man.
All right. Thank you. That was a pleasure.
See you, dude. It was great having you.
Yeah.